Bismillah, this is on the topic of the caves, and we've been given Surah Qaf. And this is a map, actually, if you look, of other countries which the governments, some of the governments, are still hiding. But hopefully there will be a president or someone that we have that will expose all this. This is a map of the Earth, flat Earth, with the people used to believe in. Now, it's important if you understand Surah Qaf, because in Surah Qaf there was Yajooj and Yajooj, which in English is Gog and Magog, and they were giants, according to English legend that lived in England. And here we have four of the angels of the earth. An angel's real, I've seen one. And then above that you've got the footstool and the arsh, and then above that you've got Allah, the God, which is above that. And here we have an image of Yajooj and Majuj type size people, humans. And if you look in his skull, you'll see like a Bigfoot type creature. If you have a really good look in his skull, you'll see a creature look similar to Bigfoot. But it's not Bigfoot, that's a jinn. Because when this guy died from punishment, this giant, the jinn also died, and you can see the jinn in his skull. Now that's very important, because I'm going to explain to you things about Islam that other scholars almost will not tell you. The earth itself is kind of like a cave, like a cake. The earth itself is kind of like a cave. Now, you must, when you listen to this, as I've said in my other videos, that I've explained in my other videos, and I continue to explain with repetition, because it's important that you listen to these videos again and again and again and again for repetition. Because when you go to school, they put you in school for years because they want to feed you things that you can't physically prove with repetition. That's when you go to the repetition, when you go to geography class, they give you fake maps of the world that deliberately leave many countries off. You know, you can look at a map 200 years ago that where they deliberately purposefully kept America and Australia and other islands and countries off the map. And then as people found them, they had to include them on the maps. Now, these countries have been around, and people knew about these countries always. You know, every country. People have always known about almost every country and island. Now then, Bismillah, if you want to get respect, you would say some Arabic words. Then you'd say Alhamdulillah, you mention some famous scholars, and then you'd narrate some things, and then at the end of the talk you'd say Alhamdulillah, and narrate some things in Arabic, and that makes you look authentic. But that doesn't mean the bulk of what you're saying is very useful or true or whatever, accurate. Could be, but there you go. So you got to look at the information, because the TV is there to program you, and that's why it gives you programs to program you. A lot of the news is fake and faked, and that's a good thing that Allah is making people deliberately tell you that a lot of news is fake. But a lot of movies, a lot of the Freemasons, a lot of the Illuminati and that, they like to stage the news sometimes, and they like to lie on the news, lie on TV programs, but they like to reveal a lot of truth in movies. Now, if you look before World War II, Robin Hood and King Arthur and giants and Gog and Magog were considered as facts and taught in school and in Sunday schools as well in Britain. Before World War II, that was. Anyway, they had to reduce the population of Earth so they can teach them a new curriculum, new school curriculum. Now, dear brothers and sisters, it is not the tone of your voice that makes you very popular, like the popular scholars of Islam. In those days, there were giants upon the earth. Because we came from paradise, from Adam and Eve. And in paradise, which is not on earth, all the things are bigger. Now, when you remember, if you can remember with inside yourselves, internally with intuition from your soul, if you can remember when Adam and Eve were sent to this earth, out of the paradise, they were sent to this earth. You see, when they were in paradise, they were gigantic, giants, similar size to the Statue of Liberty. That's how big the people were. And there was only two, Adam and Eve. Anyway, when they got arranged to come to this earth, the things didn't grow as much. And when they had children that were big. But then after generations, the children started getting smaller. And then we got foods and other things and animals starting getting to the size that they are. And things got down, and then people were 20 foot tall. Then after some time, people got to 15 and 10 foot tall. And eventually, maybe one day, people get down to 6 foot tall in height. And that's what happened. So we came to this earth. But in them days, in the time of Zulkarnain, which was a king, some people say Alexander, or anyway, a king he conquered more than just the countries that we have on our map. He conquered more countries than that, obviously. And you see, the people that were giants, many of them were pagans, and that was their crime. You see, Allah forgives all sins, apart from if anyone worships something other than him, it. So these people were giants and big. And as we know, if anyone's done any research, in America now underground there are some giants which the government has been interviewing. The government won't kill them. It just wants to interview them and get to know things from them. And it's looking after them. Have you heard of that story about the giants still alive in Afghanistan living in caves? There are giants of different heights. I'm sure you've seen the 15-foot tall giant of Japan. There's an island in Japan that's got giants on it. There's still giants living in caves in the Solomon Islands. So the government knows these things and they let them live in peace generally. But there's more giants. What happens sometimes when people die is that there's a natural barzuk. If you study the map of the flat earth, there's a natural barrier called the ice wall of Antarctica. That's like a circle that wraps around our countries. That's a natural barzuk. And even some people have told me that after we die, some people are going to just appear outside of that ice wall on them countries that you've seen earlier. Now, Allah decides where we go after we die and what happens. It's different for people. Some people have become shaheed, and that's good. And different things, and we go to different places, we'll find out. But here we're talking about the end times, and we're talking about Zulkarnain and Yajooj and Majooj. So this is one part. And for the next part, we're going to describe who Zulkarnain is. But for now, we're just letting you know that Yajooj and Majooj were giants. And they did spend a lot of time in Britain. And even the people used to tell their children as they went to sleep stories to make them aware of the giants that lived in their country. There's an English bedtime story called Jack and the Beanstalk, which was a traditional story of truth taught to children before they go to sleep, just to warn children of what actually happened and could happen again in England. So, and there's a place near London where, I'll have to show it to you, where a giant went to sleep and a boy cut his neck and cut his head off. And then what the people did with white paint or chalk, they put a circumference around him just to show how big the giant was. And there was also a big horse as well. So, there you go. So these are the things of historic facts which we can verify. But then people who go to school have opinions that are very different. Like this, watch. So here's a clip of what Yasser Qadri has actually said.
Standard medieval interpretation of Yajooj and Majooj is the following. This is what you find in Ibn Kathir. You find it in the tafsir literature of Samarqandi and of Tha'labi. And basically, this is the mainstream interpretation for our classical and middle ages of Islam. Ever since the beginning of writing tafsir, let's say 300-400 hijrah, up until pre-modernity, up until going to CE 1800s or whatnot. If you look at any book of tafsir, any book of history, the notion was the following. Yajooj and Majooj are a bizarre, exotic tribe in the nether regions of the world that have been trapped by Dhul Qarnayn thousands of years ago, and they're still trapped to this day. And quite a few medieval historians have reported that I know of a friend of mine who traveled to the end of the world and he saw with his own eyes the wall of Yajooj and Majooj.
So basically, he's even saying, he's using fancy words, yeah. So that's another reason you listen to him, and he's famous. But it doesn't mean he's right. It doesn't mean he's wrong. But you have to learn how to be open-minded. Open-minded means putting aside your things that schooling has taught you, that science and school has taught you, and just be open-minded to what people and the Muslim scholars that hundreds of years ago used to believe. And it is true what Yasser Qadri said, that there were scholars of Islam and famous Muslims that lived hundreds of years ago that did go to these strange and other countries and islands that are not on our Mercator maps, that are not on our modern maps, because obviously there are Freemasons and other agencies that want to hide entire countries and islands from us, from the common people's knowledge. Now we'll listen to some more of what he said.
Even Ibn Battuta, by the way, you find bizarre fables. You find belief in mermaids and you find weird creatures and whatnot. This is what he believed. He really believed that there are races and aliens, or not aliens, but you get my point. This is the notion of his time. Marco Polo as well, he believes these types of things. So it's not surprising that our medieval scholars believe this type of stuff. Now, obviously, dare I say, anybody who knows science and geography and modern civilization, you cannot believe that there is a tribe for 4,000 years trapped behind a wall. I mean, if you believe this, that's your position. I cannot believe it. I'm just being, I find this very difficult to believe.
You must remember, it's an article of faith to be a Muslim, to believe in this stuff. But the only thing that could make anyone disbelieve in this common thing that's instinctively in our souls, in our intuition. Our intuition tells us the truth. And the only thing that can contradict that is if we were to take children and put them in a place every day for years, and without physically proving anything to them, without actually taking them on expeditions and showing them things, we could just tell them with books and with teachers what to believe, and we can even have subjects on what to believe. We can even take them to science lessons, teach them evolution, geography lessons to teach them that America or other countries, like on the original Japanese map I just showed you, like many other countries don't exist. We can tell them whatever we want, and as long as we tell the children whilst they're young things with constant repetition, they'll probably believe it because they don't know any better, because they've only just been born, because they're only children. So, if you do recall at the start of this video, the ancient Japanese map of the Earth contains Australia and America and Canada and Mexico, and that map is about 1,000 years old. It's a Japanese map. The British maps at that time didn't have them countries on. And then if you look beyond the circles on that map at the start of this video, there's more and more outspace countries that we don't even have on our map. Now, the Japanese and other people knew about them things because they had a thing that Noah invented. And this wonderful is called a boat. You see, the ancient Egyptians and people, they learnt from the prophet Noah, that there's a thing can float on water, and it's called a boat. And since the time of Noah, and Noah's people were drowned because they were pagans and they didn't want to worship the one God above them. That's the reason why they were drowned and flooded. And to this day, you can go to any mountain and you can find fish bones on any mountain. So, because the people of Noah, and they were giants, by the way, as well, and Noah was pretty big, he was very big, because giants like Noah and the other giants of his time, they used to live almost 1,000 years about, because they were bigger. Because their mom and dad, Adam and Eve, had come from paradise, not from this earth. A much more vibrant and rich land, physical land. But they come to this other physical land down here called called Earth. And on this Earth, there was big trees, but, some of them cut them down. And now we've got these small trees, which are only 200 foot tall and so on, and 40 foot tall. But now, so it was Prophet Noah, or in Arabic, Prophet Nu, meaning Noah. He was a giant because he lived for a giant long time, over 900 years about, or more. So, and he went to the people and said, La ilaha illallah, only worship one God above us. And the people said, nah, forget it, we'll worship what we want. We'll worship what we want. But even then, they were giants, and they lived for a long time, you see. And that's just the thing that all Muslims believe. Even Christians believe in these giant things, the giants, David and Goliath. I know even the bigger giants. So we can prove that with skeletal remains. But there's an organisation, part of the Illuminati, called the Smithsonian Museum. And its job is to basically if anyone finds, say, a 40 foot or 20 foot tall skeleton of a man, don't tell the government. The government will come, and the Smithsonian Institute will just take that away. And they might they might not even put it in the papers. And they might just say, well, it might be the skeleton of a human being, but they'll lie to you and say, oh, we found a dinosaur or something. So, and they hide a lot of things, and the American government teaches the army that Bigfoot exists, so there's a lot of things to learn.
And folklores and legends were very common, and it was easy to believe these types of things, that there is this nether region of... And if you read, by the way, even Ibn Battuta, by the way, you find bizarre fables. You find belief in mermaids, and you find weird creatures and whatnot. This is what he believed. He really believed that there are races and aliens, or not aliens, but you get my point. This is the notion of his time. Marco Polo as well, he believes these types of things. So it's not surprising that our medieval scholars believe this type of stuff. Now, obviously, dare I say, anybody who knows science and geography and more.
So Ibn Battuta and other reputable famous people, including prophets themselves, and even Prophet Muhammad telling us that people were giants, explaining these things to us, alayhi salam, and even Ibn Battuta explaining to us that, him and his friends have seen mermaids, we've travelled that far, we've seen giants, or we've seen the skeletons or real ones. They've travelled, because you know what? They've travelled beyond the ice wall and to other countries, not just to America, but beyond that, beyond Antarctica, and so on and so forth. Let me tell you, when was the last time you ever heard of a country called Svalbard? There's always new islands that are put in on the map. Because, there's a big difference between going to a geography class in school when you're a child, after you've just been born. It's like the Matrix, when you're in the Matrix and you come out of that thing and you realise you're alive and you come out of that soup bag with all the liquid. You're like a child, you've just been born, that's what it represents. And then they can indoctrinate you with geography classes, and in these geography classes, they can tell you whatever they want. They can tell you the Earth's round, egg-shaped, whatever, oblong, triangle, pyramid, they can tell you whatever they want. They can tell you there's only a certain amount of countries. They told that for hundreds of years. They hid America, they hid countries, they hid Australia, they hid many countries and islands that didn't even bother putting on the maps. They knew they were there, because since the time of Noah, they've had boats, massive boats, and they can go to any country they want on boats. Because look at the ancient Egyptians, they had boats, and the ancient Egyptians, they went on ships and boats to America and to all different countries. That's why you can go to the Grand Canyon, if you research it, and there's in the Grand Canyon, there's all ancient Egyptian artifacts in the cave in the Grand Canyon. And And if you look at the ancient Egyptian artifacts, there's like giants and small people in the hieroglyphics. So you need to know these things. So in the next episode, we're going to be talking more about Zulkarnain. Some people call him Alexander. We're going to be discussing him next. So thank you, and Alhamdulillah. Allah forgive us. Thank God we're free, happy and thoughtful. Subhanallah.